This is a brief video on sentence types, and it should give you a sense of how to use simple sentences mainly, but I'm also going to talk briefly about what complex and compound sentences are. So follow along, and this should help you through your homework for tonight. So first, there's 4 basic sentence types: simple, complex, compound, and compound complex. Now we've covered sentences, and here, if you look below to the notes, I've got some thoughts on these types of sentences. Basically, a sentence is a tool for representing our thoughts in writing. Some of our thoughts are simple and straightforward, but others of our thoughts are lengthy, complicated, or convoluted. In fact, most thoughts are composed of multiple other smaller thoughts. And to deal with this situation, writers use different types of sentences: simple, complex, compound, and compound complex. Learning the different types of sentences will help you improve not just your writing, but also your thinking. Now, why is that the case? I think it has to do with being able to separate discrete thoughts into their simplest elements, and then to deliberately relate and connect those discrete thoughts to other thoughts. When we don't start with simple sentences, and that's one simple thought, we often blur all our ideas together, and as a result we get confused. So this sentence here has 3 discrete chunks to it. They're each a simple part of a sentence. The most basic sentence is the simple sentence. It consists of just one independent clause or one complete thought. For example, I like cats. Slightly more complicated is the complex sentence, which consists of one independent clause and one dependent clause. In other words, it has one complete thought and a second incomplete thought whose meaning depends on the complete one. For example, I like cats because they take care of themselves. The complete thought is, I like cats. The dependent thought, because they take care of themselves, doesn't make sense all by itself. The word because needs a thought to base itself on. Complex sentences relate 2 thoughts, where one is considered the main thought and the second is considered dependent on the first. Words that set up a dependent relationship of ideas include because, although, since, and there's a bunch of other ones. Similar to complex sentences are compound sentences. The only difference is that compound sentences relate 2 thoughts of equal grammatical value, or equal weight, or just equal thoughts. The thoughts don't depend on the other for their meaning. For example, I like cats, but I also like dogs. The comma is used here to show that you have 2 independent thoughts joined by a conjunction. Conjunctions that set up equal relations of complete ideas include ones like and, but, or, so, yet, nor, or for. They're also called coordinating conjunctions. Complex compound sentences do all the above, but basically they mix complex and compound together. I'm going to skip ahead here. So for example, I like cats because they take care of themselves, but I also like dogs. You can make these sentences even longer. I like cats because they take care of themselves and because they don't bark. But I also like dogs since dogs will fetch a frisbee and play fetch. You can really make sentences be as long as you want, as long as you keep joining simple thoughts together with different types of conjunctions. That sentence includes many simple thoughts. I like cats, they take care of themselves. I also like dogs, dogs will fetch with a frisbee. These various conjunctions, because, but, and since, help link these ideas together in a clear, orderly, and logical manner. So for this video, I want to stick specifically to just simple sentences, because they aren't actually as simple as you might think. We already talked about how all sentences need a noun, so I'm not going to spend much time here. You might want to pause the video so you can reread this description of nouns below. If not, skip on to verbs. And again, here I've spent a good amount of time covering verbs already in class. If you want, you can pause the video here as well and read this description. And the other part, in addition to nouns and verbs, that simple sentences usually have are some type of direct object, or prepositional phrase, or subject complement. We'll start with direct objects. Simple sentences have many possible shapes they can take. First, they can have any of three types of verbs: action, event, or state of being. If you have an action verb, you will also have a direct object, which is the thing or idea that the action of a sentence happens to. The recipient of the action, the direct object, can be as simple as a single thing, typo, but it can also be a phrase, which is just a group of words, or it can be an entire clause. And a clause is a group of words that express a thought. Here are some examples that show you what direct objects might look like. Just as a side note, you don't need to memorize the term direct objects. All you need to do is be able to construct simple sentences that use direct objects. You need to be able to use it, not study the terminology. So examples: I love cake. Cake is the noun that is receiving the action of love. Pronouns: I love it. The it, I presume, stands for cake here. If you want to use a phrase as the object, you could say I love eating cake, where I turned the action of eating into a noun, which is just the process of eating, and the phrase includes eating cake. So I love eating cake. Or if you could put an entire thought at the end of a simple sentence that says, I love when I get to eat cake. So this little when here prevents the I get to eat cake from being a whole sentence. To just say, when I get to eat cake doesn't make sense. So you need I love when I get to eat cake. Okay. And skipping on, so the other type of simple sentence that you might have would use another type of action verb called an event verb. If a simple sentence has an event verb, it doesn't have anything that receives the action. Action just happens or occurs. But often, saying when, where, how, or why that action happened helps explain an idea. So for instance, up here we could say I walked in the park, and that says where I walked. I walked through the park, and that might say how I walked. Okay, so you get the basic idea. It just explains this action here, this thought. Prepositional phrases are tools for explaining when, where, how, and why. They always begin with a preposition word like in, or through, or above, or after, or by. And I will give a handout with all of the prepositions in English on it, so you can use that as a reference. But basically, anything you can do around or with a box is a preposition. I can stand by it, go around it, get in it, climb on top of it, go beneath it, and so on. Anytime you use a preposition, you will likely find yourself adding something that follows the preposition. What follows can be a noun, pronoun, gerund, or a clause. Don't worry about this stuff, just write what makes sense. A gerund would just be where I was saying in the last slide, I turned this verb, to eat, into a noun, eating. That's a gerund. So you could say, I walked after running. Instead of saying, I walked after to run, you turn that verb into a noun. But yeah, you don't need to know that. You don't have to memorize it. It's just something that is there that you do naturally without thinking about it. So here, feel free to pause the video and review these different example sentences. And don't forget to read this part here where I describe the type of sentence you have. So if you have a relationship in your sentence that is an event, so I walked, or I talked, or I witnessed, or the car drove. And then after it, you're going to usually have a prepositional phrase that says the car drove away, or toward, or through, or by. And that describes where, when, or how that event happened. Okay, good. The third type of simple sentence, and there really are only three simple sentences, three types of simple sentences here. Okay, and that is the third type of simple sentence contains a state of being verb. State of being verbs include any form of to be. So that would be be, being, been, am, is, are, was, were, and also seems and feels gets included in there as a state of being too. I feel like something is almost the same as saying I am a certain way. There are more action and event verbs than there are state of being verbs. This is the list of state of being verbs, and that's the only ones you've got to worry about for this type of verb. They tend to be the most frequently used, however. But action and event verbs tend to be more descriptive and more informational. State of being verbs are supposed to link your subject to information about itself. So the aliens is the subject here, and they were green. This state of being verb, were, which is one of these, links this information, greenness, to the aliens. The aliens were green. So often state of being verbs get called linking verbs because they link into information. I prefer to call these state of being verbs because if you abbreviate state of being verbs, it becomes SOB, or sons of bitches. And I believe that being verbs are sons of bitches. I think this because state of being verbs often link to information without explaining why or how that information is linked. So if I simply say I am smart, that gives you information about myself. However, what do we have in this sentence that tells me why or how we know or what decides what smart even is? It's not even in there. It's just literally just saying things. So you have to be really careful when you use state of being verbs to make sure that you use it carefully to express an idea that represents a supportable statement rather than an empty idea. So we'll delete that. Okay, so that covers the three different types of simple sentences: one with an action verb, one with an event verb, one with a state of being. The three things that get attached to the after side of these sentences, after you have a subject and a verb, are going to be other things, the direct objects, or you might have prepositional phrases, or you might have subject complements. They all go hand in hand, and these will help you make simple sentences that you can later combine to make complex sentences, compound sentences, and compound complex sentences. We'll get to these and we'll talk about conjunctions, but for now, learn to use and develop this basic simple sentence because all other sentences are built out of combinations of these simple ones. This one here is a simple one, this one here is a simple one, and this little conjunction just combines the two. So you have to get really good at simple sentences before you become an expert on these long, lengthy, complicated ones. So for now, focus on simple ones and you'll be good to go. And thanks for listening.